So my name's Jules, and for the found text presentation, I have chosen the novel LaRose by Louise Erdrich. In summary, the novel takes place on a Native American reservation in a fictional town in North Dakota, and it follows the two stories of families grieving over two different kinds of loss. The Reviches, who are close friends of the Irons, lose their 5-year-old son Dusty in a hunting accident when Lindro Iron accidentally shoots and kills Dusty, mistaking him for a deer. And following the Native American means of retribution, the Irons give their 5-year-old son LaRose to the Reviches as a mean to make up for the loss of Dusty. The Irons have the grief of missing LaRose, though he is still alive, and they have to learn to live their life without him. Though later in the novel, they discover that they cannot live their life without their son and need him in their lives, because knowing that he's been being raised by someone that isn't their family hurts them, and they need him in their life. So they compromise with the Reviches and end up sharing custody of LaRose. The timeline of the novel is not chronological, and it follows many different plot points, which all contain many subversions and plot twists, but the overarching plot point and plot twist is the theme of retribution, following what I'm about to describe. Not only does Landro have to offer his youngest son as a means of retribution for the murder of Dusty, but another grudge is held against him that demands vengeance. Romeo Puyat, Landro's former best friend, seeks vengeance against Landro for a life-changing event they went through as young men. So the men, as young boys, went to boarding school together, and they were best friends, but they wanted to run away from boarding school, so they did just that. And while they were running away, they got in trouble because they were found out, and they were also stealing from local convenience stores in order to survive. So the boarding school and the police were after them. So they were hiding from the people who were looking for them on a ledge, and Romeo falls off the ledge, and Landro tries to pull him up, but Landro ends up falling on top of Romeo, basically crippling him. So Romeo's laying just by himself in the forest, unconscious and very wounded, and Landro tries to run to the police to get help, but they end up holding him there for several days, and Romeo has no idea that he is trying to get him help. He just thinks Landro ran off without him, leaving him basically for dead. So Romeo holds a massive grudge against him for crippling him and for leaving him behind. Romeo is also in love with Landro's wife, Emmeline, so there is the jealousy factor, trying to get the woman that he loves back from Landro. There's this whole feeling of betrayal from his best friend. Retribution and revenge is, like, they're two different things in the context of the novel, and they are different things normally, but they're very glaringly obvious in the novel, as the form of Native American retribution is peaceful. They didn't ask for a life for a life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth in that way. They just asked for, in this instance, they gave LaRose as a form of retribution, not revenge. He was alive for Dusty's life, but stayed alive. But Romeo feels that Landro owes him due to what they went through as young boys, but loses sight of reality in his anger, and his judgment is also clouded by the use of drugs. In his blind rage, Romeo convinces Peter Revich, Dusty's father, that the murder of his son was not an accident, that Landro premeditated it. Peter believes Romeo, consumed by his grief, he is blinded by the truth, and wishes to kill Landro for what he has done. Landro, still consumed by guilt of what he has done, even after all these years, agrees to give his life as a final means of satisfaction for the Revich family and ending all of their pain and suffering. He just wants everything to go away. Peter takes Landro out to an empty field and aims a gun at him, pulling the trigger, but nothing happens. One of the subplots in LaRose is that Dusty's mother, Nola, is depressed from the loss of her son, and she attempts to kill herself, but is stopped by her daughter Maggie. Maggie tells LaRose that she's attempted to do this, and LaRose is very troubled by the idea of losing her. And he loves her. He loves both of his families, and he wants to protect her. So in order to protect Nola, LaRose hides anything that could potentially be used for Nola to hurt herself. So she hides LaRose hides all of the bleach, the rat poisoning, the ropes, and he takes the bullets out of Peter's gun. He did this not knowing what was to come later, and he therefore unknowingly saved his biological father, Landro's life, and he saved Peter from making a horrible mistake. Though Peter did not literally kill Landro, he was the only one that knew he pulled the trigger, meaning he would have killed him had the gun been loaded. Peter got the satisfaction of having the guts to kill Landro without actually murdering him. And Romeo eventually learns that Landro did not abandon him. He did not mean to cripple him. He did not mean to ruin his life and steal Emmeline from him, and he eventually forgives Landro at the end. The grudges are all resolved at the end of the novel, despite all of the very, very dramatic and emotional things that take place. They learn to forgive each other. The Erdrich and the Iron family are now together, and their anger and their grudges have been resolved, and LaRose was the antidote of that these two families needed to cure their deep-seated anger and pain. LaRose mended each member of both families in one way or another, bringing them back together in the end. And that is all. Thank you.